What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Godzilla Kong Supernova breakdown. In this one, we are continuing our discussion from the last GXK breakdown, where we talked about where the threat for Supernova might be coming from. I theorized that maybe we summoned, and by we I mean the Iwi, or someone on Earth, summoned a destroyer from the stars to take on Godzilla and Kong. In this one, we're going to be continuing that discussion by talking about who they might be fighting. Let's get into it. Before we continue, do two things to help me out. I'd really appreciate it. Number one, comment below, who do you think it is right off the bat? You're probably going to say Spacegodzilla, but comment below right off the bat, who do you think they're going to be fighting? And then let's see if your theory changes by the end of the video. And number two, why aren't you subscribed yet? I mean, for reals. Come on, subscribe. Join D-Force today, all right? We're the only army on the entire internet that is equipped to take on Godzilla, and we'll lose, but at least we'll do it. No one else is even going to do it, so you might as well subscribe. This is in many ways the continuation of the discussion we started in my teaser breakdown for Supernova, but it really is the second part to our two-part discussion. We're talking about who Godzilla and Kong are fighting in this new movie from the last video. One thing I talked about right at the top of the last video is that maybe the reason we don't know who this new villain is because it's a Toho monster. Unlike with Godzilla Kong the New Empire, where they came right out and said, hey, Scar King is the villain, check him out. I guess they didn't say it was Scar King, but they showed us him. We saw him. He was sitting on the throne. They didn't do that for this one. It's a lot more cryptic, and I have a couple theories on why that might be. You can go check that video out for more. But one of the main theories is that it is a Toho monster. And if it's a Toho monster, they are going to want to save it. You know, that's going to be like a thing that they can tease over time. Although they did come out and say Mothra, King Ghidorah, and Rodan were going to be in King of the Monsters as far back as 2014 or 15, so who knows, but I guess we'll see. One bit of evidence to suggest it could be a Toho monster, and I think this also gives us a great suspects list to deal with in this video, is Adam Wingard himself. Now I know Adam Wingard is not returning to direct this movie, but Adam Wingard was involved early on for this movie's development. When Adam Wingard was still involved, Legendary was kind of deciding where to take the next movie. So what did Wingard have to say about this? Well, if you remember, I did a video talking about this already, about how Adam Wingard blatantly confirmed that there will be more Toho monsters appearing in the future of the MonsterVerse. It's entirely possible that he's talking about like the return of Mothra or whatever, but that's not literally what he was saying. What he was actually saying is, if he returns to do a third GXK movie, he knows exactly what Toho monster he's going to bring into the MonsterVerse to have them fight, and I theorize in that video that Spacegodzilla seems right up his alley, and Hedorah. Both of them I think are great picks, and we'll talk about both of them in this video. The important thing is, I think the likelihood of Godzilla and Kong taking on a Toho monster is very, very likely. Another major reason that it'll probably be a Toho monster is because Adam Wingard also said if he does another GXK movie, he wants it to be much more Godzilla focused. And if there's one thing that the MonsterVerse has been, it's a little too receptive to feedback. Godzilla 2014 critics were like, wait, we don't want all the humans, we want more monsters. Then you got Kong Skull Island, and people were actually a little bit like, oh, there's too many monsters, we want more humans, which they're dumb, because that's a great movie, it's a perfect movie, so shut up. They responded with King of the Monsters, and people were like, oh, we didn't get to see the monsters fight enough, and it was a little too messy, and there's too much going on. So then they did Godzilla vs. Kong, and then people were like, oh, this is good, but we want somehow even more monsters. So then they give us the New Empire, and then people were like, this might be enough. We might want a little more humans, and now they're giving us a little more humans. But another complaint that has occurred over Godzilla vs. Kong in the New Empire is people being like, hey, Kong said it's time, give the spotlight to Godzilla. They're probably gonna do that. If this next movie is a little more Godzilla focused, which might explain why Godzilla's roar is the only roar heard at the end of the teaser, although pretty much most MonsterVerse trailers and teasers end with only Godzilla's roar with very few exceptions, but if it's gonna be a more Godzilla focused movie, you'd expect a Godzilla villain to be in it. So let's run through our candidates. Starting out, this one's just, I'm sorry buddy, you might appear in the movie, you're gonna get wasted if you do. You're gonna go the way of Scylla or Tiamat. Abaddon. Abaddon was teased to return in the MonsterVerse by the developers of Kong Survivor Instinct, of course the game where Abaddon makes his first appearance in the MonsterVerse. It's entirely possible that Abaddon's used as a fodder kaiju in this movie, but Abaddon's not gonna be the big bad. Sorry Abaddon, you're just not cool enough. Next up, and this is one that I'm just gonna like move on from this entire topic, is that it's not a celestial monster, it is just one with celestial level incredible power, someone like Destoroyah. If it was going to be Destoroyah, I don't think we would have such a strong space theme for this next movie. We wouldn't have so many hints to space. There wouldn't be saying, watch this space. I'd probably say like, look out in the middle of the ocean right next to Isla de Mara. If it's saying it's from space, it's going to be from space. I like the idea that Destoroyah is also saved for the very last MonsterVerse movie, which if we're following the Toho series, we're on the last one. The next one is the end. If we're following the Heisei era, the next movie's the last movie, just saying. And that's where Destoroyah would show up. I think it's a monster from the stars. I think it's a celestial monster, so who might it be? Godzilla has a few celestial monsters. I've seen some people hopeful that it'll be like the space amoeba monsters. It's not going to be them. And same with Ghidorah. It's not going to be Ghidorah. It's going to be a more popular one. So goodbye those ones. And next up is another one we're going to kind of dismiss, and that's Orga. As excited as I would be for Orga to return, Orga's a really cool monster who of course appears in Godzilla Millennium 2000. Orga's pretty awesome. Also a very underrated monster who only ever reappears in Godzilla Monster Planet for a cameo. Orga I don't think is going to return. Orga's not popular enough to return. In fact, with more recent information from Godzilla King of the Monsters, there was originally going to be some more Toho monsters that appeared in Godzilla King of the Monsters, and they were replaced with other monsters, like off-brand versions. For instance, it seems that Kumonga was going to appear in the movie and was replaced with Scylla, which checks out because if you go back and watch my videos from 2018, I said that's exactly what would happen. You don't want to pay for a name brand thing if you don't need to. You don't need a Supreme hoodie. You don't need it. If you can get a regular hoodie, you don't need the Supreme one, he says while wearing a Hurley hoodie. The point is, I don't think they're going to go with Orga. He's just not popular enough. We've seen a continued trend in the MonsterVerse now where they've replaced other monsters. That leads us to my boy. I'm going to give it to Gigan next up. Gigan, I know I want him so badly. I actually think he's not that likely. We know that O'Shea Jackson Jr. and Chris Mijahangi are over at Monarch G Team. They want to make that anime. They want to use Gigan. Gigan is a fan favorite. Gigan is beloved. Gigan is great. Gigan could be possible. I would love that. So Gigan comes from the M Space Hunter Nebula, which of course could be why we see such a nebula theming. Gigan basically comes from a nebula, which are the result of a supernova. So whatever, you could use the title supernova and it could be with Gigan. Gigan is awesome. He's a cyborg enhanced controlled by aliens, which means if Gigan shows up, there's probably going to be an alien threat. There pretty much hasn't been a Gigan appearance where there isn't like a humanoid alien threat to go along with him. Maybe the MonsterVerse wants to avoid that, which is one reason that they might not use Gigan, as they did introduce the idea of King Ghidorah being an alien, but they didn't introduce the idea of humanoid aliens like the Exilians. So it's entirely possible they don't go with that. One reason Gigan would be awesome is because he's such a wild card. He's like the Rodan of bad guys. He's such an interesting villain, and he's also perfect for team-ups, which will go on with the theory we talk about later where like maybe there's going to be more than one monster, and if Gigan's going to be used, I'm going to say he's probably not going to be used as the only big bad. He'll probably be one of a couple. And Gigan actually, I don't think has ever fought Godzilla without being a part of a team-up movie either. Not only that, but the poor lad is always used as a weapon by someone else. And if you wanted to do a story that touched upon some interesting themes, like people using titans in warfare, well, this would be a great way to do so. All that said, I truly don't get the Gigan vibe, despite the fact that the logo Supernova starts with that glowing red beam that many people have thought looks like Gigan's eye. Unfortunately, I don't think there's enough to suggest Gigan will be in this film. The next option is Hedorah. Now, Hedorah is also kind of interesting. He's also birthed from a nebula. Hedorah in many ways could be literally the result of the radiation from a supernova explosion creating a monster. Hedorah would be great because he is a world-ending threat if you treat him right. He is a threat that would require Godzilla and Kong to team up against. Hedorah would be fantastic. The reason Hedorah is such a likely contender is because Godzilla vs. Hedorah is by far one of the most influential Godzilla movies of all time, and it is particularly influential on the MonsterVerse, not just because its director Yoshimitsu Banno is the one who created the MonsterVerse through a roundabout deal, and you can see Banno's name is actually still in all the MonsterVerse movies to this day, but it's because every single MonsterVerse director, whether it be Gareth Edwards or Adam Wingard, has said that Godzilla vs. Hedorah is one of their all-time favorites. TJ Storm, who plays Godzilla, says Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster was his first movie. It has had such a lasting impact that seeing Hedorah back, that could be a thing that's more of a personal passion for the filmmakers rather than for the fans, and there could be enough of an argument for the studio to allow Hedorah into the film. Again though, who knows? Next up, and this is one that I love, but I really doubt, who is a supernova threat? Who is a threat literally on the level of a supernova? You know, you can talk about like what characters are like galaxy threat, but like who is literally the supernova threat of the Godzilla universe? It is my favorite interpretation, well, not my favorite design or iteration, of King Ghidorah, Void Ghidorah, the Eater of Stars. Supernovas are what happen when a star reaches the end of its life, and it either collapses into a black hole or explodes into a supernova. There's only one kaiju who we know that can destroy stars as they exist, and that is King Ghidorah of the anime universe, a multidimensional being. The new kaiju could be birthed from a supernova's radiation, or it could cause supernovas to whichever galaxy it visits. This kaiju could be the Void Ghidorah we've seen in the anime, and I don't think so. He's such an unliked character. He's so obscure as well. Like, what a weird pull. If you're gonna take a version of King Ghidorah, you're gonna go with like the one from Godzilla King of the Monsters and resurrect him, which I'm all for. King Ghidorah also could be a galaxy level threat. Resurrecting King Ghidorah and making him supercharged, you could say he's in a supernova state. I'm all for that. I don't think it's gonna be literally Void Ghidorah, but you could take inspiration from Void Ghidorah and apply it to King Ghidorah, who obviously can regenerate. And now in the comics, we've learned that Tiamat's blood can probably revive dead titans. You could revive Ghidorah and the dude can just regenerate. So, oh, you're in bad shape if Ghidorah's back. It could also be something a little different. Monster X. Monster X is another version of King Ghidorah. He is so different from King Ghidorah that he's actually his own character. He is Kaiser Ghidorah. King Ghidorah in the MonsterVerse, according to the Godzilla King of the Monsters novelization, was more of a prince than the king. He kind of came to Earth to claim it as his kingdom, as he wasn't the king of his own planet. Well, what if the king of his own planet showed up? Kaiser Ghidorah. Either Kaiser Ghidorah literally or Monster X, and maybe you just don't have him fully evolve into Kaiser Ghidorah, but if you're gonna bring Monster X, you might as well. But he is a cosmic level threat. He comes from the stars. He could be a supernova threat. That'd be pretty sick. Next up, Zo-zla-halawa. I know we keep talking about this monster all the time. It's Godzilla. It just is Godzilla. If you don't know, Zo-zla-halawa was first mentioned in the Godzilla vs. Kong novelization. It's an iwi legend about a member of Godzilla's species who kind of becomes crooked and evil after consuming a star and becoming all powerful. By consuming a star, he becomes in many ways a supernova level threat, doesn't he? Well, I've always interpreted this to mean that the eating of the star is the iwi's explanation for the atomic breath, as they wouldn't understand how that works. You just see the thing breathing fire and go, that's the eater of stars. I've always thought that it could just be the Godzilla we meet. I don't know. I've always thought that it's literally the Godzilla. I mean, they kind of make that outright in Godzilla Kong: The New Empire, but it could also be that Zo-zla-halawa is a type of Godzilla-esque creature, a version of Godzilla who's like mutated by the stars or something. I don't know what the eating of the star technically means in canon. Like, I think that's just always just kind of a metaphor, but maybe he literally did consume radiation from a star, from the core of the earth at some point, and became this weird, crooked, burning Godzilla. And that's why you see the Supernova title card go full burning mode, just like burning Godzilla. I don't think they're gonna go with that for a couple reasons. Number one, the MonsterVerse isn't really allowed to acknowledge or show other members of Godzilla species on screen anymore, because I think Toho wised up and was like, hey, wait a minute, that Dagon creature you introduced in your comic book, you're not gonna get any wise ideas and try and use that thing without licensing Godzilla, claiming that it's your IP and not ours, are you? And I think they're trying to shut that conversation down before it can continue by just being like, don't create Godzilla variants on screen. Godzilla hasn't been retconned out of being a species, it's just we're not gonna talk about it anymore. Also, if you're gonna go with an alternate version of Godzilla who ate a star, why wouldn't you go with the number one boy, Spacegodzilla? Spacegodzilla is the number one fan theory. I do worry that fans are getting too attached to the theory and they're gonna be let down if it isn't Spacegodzilla, but the last film had Scar King, who was the evil antithesis to Kong, and so why wouldn't you give Godzilla his turn and give him an evil antithesis? To give my take on that argument, that was what Mechagodzilla was for, so we've already did that. We went from Mechagodzilla to Scar King. We don't need to keep alternating every single time, otherwise who's Kong gonna fight next? Mechanic Kong? I don't know. The space theme of the movie seems very appropriate for Spacegodzilla. Spacegodzilla's origins are pretty messy, but he is always the result of a black hole, which is the opposite of a supernova, but it's still related. Spacegodzilla is either Godzilla cells falling into a black hole and emerging out of a white hole, evolving into an organic creature with crystalline structures, turning into Spacegodzilla, especially because he also absorbs the energy from exploding stars around him, so he is literally like like being born from the radiation from supernova explosions. That's what turns Space Godzilla into Space Godzilla. Like I said, this does have two possibilities on how it came to be, but that's the consistent between the two possibilities. The two possibilities of how the Godzilla cells even got into the black hole in the first place are either that Biollante ascending into space at the end of Godzilla vs. Biollante, she drifts into space, becomes one with the cosmos, and her cells fall through the black hole, which in some ways means it's really more of a space Biollante than a space Godzilla. Or it's Mothra carrying Godzilla's cells out into space on her mission to intercept the meteor, which was going to destroy Earth. We do know that's what she does. Supplementary material seems to suggest that it's the Mothra origins. That's the canon reason that Space Godzilla created Mothra is to blame. It would also make sense why Space Godzilla resembles Godzilla and not Biollante. Like I said, with Adam Wingard confirming that this next movie is going to be a lot more Godzilla focused, or at least saying he wanted to make it more Godzilla focused. We don't know what Grant Spitore or Grant Spitor is going to do with the next film, but we do know that that was at least what Wingard wanted to do, so it makes sense to give Godzilla a much more prominent antithesis who is directly related to him. This is the 6th film of the MonsterVerse, and Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla was the 6th film of the Heisei series. Some people have even compared the title cards of Godzilla Kong Supernova to Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla and said they seem similar, although that seems like a completely made up argument, as pretty much every MonsterVerse title card looks very similar. And then the Godzilla roar over the title card I've heard people say could be Space Godzilla's roar, although the Heisei series, Godzilla and Space Godzilla did not share the same roar, so I don't think that really means anything. The binary code which flashes on screen during the Supernova teaser is my biggest piece of evidence to say that it could be Space Godzilla, as it translates to Godzilla Kong period watch this space, but the way it's formatted, because it's a repeating code, it keeps repeating Godzilla Kong watch this Space Godzilla Kong watch this Space Godzilla, and it's literally the word Space Godzilla, just simply due to the way they formatted it. That's a very big possibility. You know who I'd love to see more than Space Godzilla, but who it won't be, and who it would be way more exciting, is Gamera, who can fly around in space. I saw some people talking about Gamera. I just wanted to give my thought on the fact that I would like it more, but it won't be. Yes, Gamera can go to space. He doesn't come from space. My honest thought is that it's going to be a brand new monster, just like we've seen in the previous MonsterVerse films. I think it's going to be a brand new monster who takes heavy inspiration from the Toho monsters. I think it is going to be a new monster that takes heavy inspiration from Gigan and Hedorah and Space Godzilla. Those three in particular. Those three would make up the core space monsters that Godzilla fights, other than King Ghidorah, who you could take inspo from. I think it's going to be a brand new monster because they're not going to want to license another monster. I mean, they didn't even want to license Mothra for the new Empire. They wanted to go with a brand new monster. So I don't know. I think that's very likely. Another reason that they might not want to show the new monster right away is just so that we don't overhype them the way we did with Scar King, although in doing so now we can speculate about Space Godzilla till the end of time and then get disappointed when it isn't Space Godzilla. Rick the Squirrel pitched, and this is just truly brilliant. Kong already fought his exact antithesis with Scar King. It's Godzilla's turn to fight Star King. That's right, Star King confirmed. It's not even related to Scar King, by the way. I don't know what Rick's headcanon is. Rick, your headcanon isn't canon, buddy. The real reason that Star King exists is just because he does. He just does. Why does he look like Scar King? Don't worry about it. And you know what he's first gonna do is eat Zuko. That's the first scene of the movie. It's actually really graphic, and I actually kind of wish they cut it because it's a little disturbing. Like, he literally eats him like freaking chicken wings. I actually really hate that scene. I think it's really disturbing, and Zuko didn't deserve that. Then he digs Minya out of the Showa continuity. Like, I didn't even know he had multiversal powers, but he does. He takes his head off, and then he just drops him back into the Showa continuity. Like, he didn't need to. He just took his head off. Star King is actually the scariest threat of any Godzilla continuity, and you'll never be able to convince me otherwise. With the three most popular theories being Gigan, Hedorah, and Space Godzilla, I've seen one theory that is a little too optimistic, and that's that if Godzilla vs. Kong was a 2v1 with Godzilla and Kong taking on Mechagodzilla, and Godzilla Kong the New Empire was a 2v2 with Godzilla and Kong taking on Shimo and Scar King, maybe this new movie will be a 2v3 with Godzilla and Kong taking on Space Godzilla and Hedorah and Gigan, or any other assortment of monsters from space. I don't know if that's a great poll. Godzilla vs. Kong was a 2v1. Godzilla Kong the New Empire was Godzilla and Kong versus an army of apes, Scar King and Shimo, so that was like 7 apes, and then also Zuko and Mothra were involved, so it's not really a 2v2 in any regard. I don't know. I don't think that's a great theory. The best piece of evidence I've seen to suggest that we will see more than one enemy in this next movie is Dan Stevens himself, who first took to Instagram to tease the phrase "watch this space" many weeks ago, breaking the wall open on this new ARG, but then he teased very specifically when this announcement came out, a post of Godzilla and Kong running with 2 meteors falling next next to them. Not only were there 2 meteors falling next to them, but in his bio, he had a meteor and explosion. First of all, I think that means a threat arriving to Earth as a meteor. Like, I think that is gonna be in the movie. The threat arrives to Earth in the movie as a meteor. Secondly, I think there's gonna be 2 of them. I don't think he'd put 2 in both. Like, he put 2 meteors and then he put a meteor and an explosion, which I'm kind of seeing represents 2 meteors. That's what I think it means. Maybe it just means the meteor hitting and exploding, but 2 meteors is my guess to say I think there really will be 2 monsters. Or maybe I'm just hopeful, because if you see in the background, Godzilla vs. Gigan introduced the idea of Gigan and King Ghidorah arriving to Earth, not in meteor form. Ghidorah was a meteor-ish thing, and then Gigan was like a diamond, but they erupted into Gigan and King Ghidorah. It was awesome. King Ghidorah also in the Showa continuity specifically arrives to Earth as a meteor first of all, and then grows into King Ghidorah. I've never understood that, but he does. Monster X also arrives as a meteor. Those are the only monsters that arrive as literally a meteor. Spacegodzilla doesn't. You could always change that. Spacegodzilla does take a meteor-looking form with his ball form, but literally, King Ghidorah is a meteor when he arrives on Earth. Maybe it's wishful thinking. It is wishful thinking, but that's the only piece of evidence I've seen to suggest the theory of maybe we'll get that kind of like multi-enemy battle going on from the stars. At the end of the day, all I hope is that Godzilla and Kong remain on Earth. I'm not looking for another Planet X fight personally. I'd rather see the enemies come to us than us go to them. Anytime a movie goes, we're taking the fight to them, it's typically a bad movie. So personally, I just want to see a meteor fall from the stars and be a big bad that we can get a very exciting film out of. But what about you? Who do you think they're gonna fight? Comment below and let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's your favorite theory out of all of these? I'm sticking to a brand new monster personally, but that's just me. And what are your thoughts on Star King, and how did you feel about that horrific Suko sequence? As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. If supporting the Patreon is not your thing, please consider joining as a channel member. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.